Picture the scene. It's summer of 1978. Whitesnake had been a band for less than 6 months. They'd done a handful of club shows, recorded a 4-track EP on a shoestring budget, and convinced a record label to take a chance on them. Now they're walking into Central Recording Studio in London to make their debut album. They have 10 days. 10 days to prove that David Coverdale's post-Purple reinvention wasn't just a solo vanity project. 10 days to show that this lineup, 2 guitars, bass, drums, keyboards, had something real to say. 10 days to make a record that would justify everything that had come since that messy, painful March morning in 1976 when Coverdale handed in his resignation from Deep Purple and walked away from the biggest band of his life. And then, right at the finish line, something happened that nobody planned. Something that will completely transform the record and the band before a single copy hit the shelves. But we'll get to that. Let's start at the beginning. By the time Whitesnake entered the studio, they were tightly rehearsed and road tested in a way that most debut acts simply aren't. After the Snakebite sessions in April, the band had continued gigging, continued writing, and continued sharpening that twin guitar identity that Micky, Moody, and Bernie Marsden had been developing since that first Soho basement rehearsal. Songwriting was a genuine collaborative effort, even if Coverdale remained the creative center of gravity. Moody and Marsden contributed heavily to the arrangements, working out the dual guitar attack on tracks like Take Me With You and Time Is Right for Love. During the West End rehearsals until the interplay between them felt indistinctive and locked in. These weren't songs being figured out in the studio. By the time they hit the record, everyone knew exactly what they were playing and why. There was one track that took a slightly different route. Coverdale had decided to include a cover, a heavy blues-driven reinterpretation of the Beatles' Day Tripper. She's a big teaser. Now, covering one of the most recognizable guitar riffs in rock history is either an extremely confident move or an extremely reckless one, depending on your perspective. But Whitesnake had a specific idea. They weren't going to polish it up. They were going to drag it into the swamp, slow the tempo down, beef up the riff with thick, overdriven Les Paul tones, and let Moody and Martin trade licks over the top until it sounded like less of a pop hit and more like a late-night blues jam that had gotten a little out of hand. And there was one more wrinkle in the songwriting. Coverdale stepped aside on lead vocals for a track called Free Flight, handing a microphone to Bernie Marsden, who prepared the song himself during rehearsals. It was a generous move and a telling one. This wasn't David Coverdale's backing band. This was a group of musicians who trusted each other. In July 1978, the band arrived at Central Recorders and got to work. Because they'd already been through the Snakebite sessions in the same studio with the same producer, Martin Birch. There was no settling in period, no figuring out how the room worked, just how Birch operated. They just went straight into it. The result was one of the most efficient debut album recordings in classic rock history. 10 days, tracked and mixed, start to finish. The road work and the rehearsals had done their job. The band played like they had been making records for years. Pete Soley handled keyboard duties during the main sessions. He'd done the same on the Snakebite EP, and he knew the material. Tracks got laid down, the mixes came together, and by all accounts, the album was effectively finished. And then David Coverdale made a phone call. Here's something worth knowing about John Lord. After Deep Purple collapsed in 1976, he hadn't exactly landed on his feet. He formed a new group called Pace Ashton Lord with drummer Ian Pace and keyboardist Tony Ashton. But that project dissolved quickly and left him in a creative holding pattern. By 1976, he was restless, underutilized, and by his own admission, feeling somewhat adrift. Coverdale had actually tried to find a keyboard player. Earlier in the process, he reached out to Colin Towns from the Ian Gillan Band and Tony Ashton, but neither of these conversations led anywhere, so he went for the person he really wanted all along. Pitch wasn't complicated. Coverdale laid out the vision, a blues-based hard rock band, real grit, real soul, no compromise, and he was persistent about it. Lord listened, Lord thought about it, and John Lord said yes. The problem was the timing. By the time Lord agreed to join, the album was done. Every track recorded, every mix complete, Pete Soli's keyboard parts were woven throughout the entire record. So Martin Birch did something fairly dramatic. He wiped Soli's keyboard tracks from the master tapes entirely. And then John Lord walked into the studio alone, listened back to the finished instrumental tracks, and overdubbed brand new piano and Hammond organ parts from scratch across the entire album. Think about what that actually means. No rehearsals with the band, no time to develop the parts organically, just Lord, the tapes, and then Hammond responding in real time to performances he hadn't been part of. And what he came up with didn't just fill the space Soli had left, it fundamentally changed what the record was. Lord described in his own role as adding a halo, providing color and weight that rounded out the twin guitar attack, but that undersells it. His roaring Hammond organ transformed Whitesnake from a lean, capable British pub rock act into something that felt genuinely arena-sized. Every track he touched suddenly had a third dimension to it, that unmistakable Deep Purple adjacent sonic authority that no other keyboardist in rock history could have provided. By October 12, 1978, when Trouble hit shelves, John Lord was officially credited as a full band member. The lineup that would dominate the UK rock scene for the next several years was complete. There was one more personal detail about the album that Coverdale has mentioned over the years, and it's a good one. The title, Trouble. It wasn't locked in until right at the end of production. It was cemented when Coverdale's first child was born during the recording sessions. Make that of what you will. The album opens with Take Me With You, and the twin guitar attack is right there from the first few seconds. Moody and Martin coming at you together, that dual guitar identity that had been the whole point. From the moment Moody suggested bringing in a second guitarist. It's high energy, it's confident, and Lord's Hammond is sitting right behind the guitars, giving the whole thing that extra weight. Love to Keep You Warm follows, and it's a quintessential example of what early Whitesnake did better than almost anyone else in that lane at that time. Mid-tempo, groove heavy, Coverdale in his lower soulful chest register rather than reaching any kind of metal scream. Martin delivers a fluid melodic blues rock solo in the middle, and Lord's overdubbed organ gives the verses a warmth that the Snakebite material didn't quite have yet. Lie Down was the band's first official single, released just ahead of the album, and it's the most immediate thing on the record. Boogie-woogie piano from Lord, barrel house, almost rollicking, driving at breakneck tempo, while Dowie hammers away at the kit underneath. Moody and Martin get solo space in the middle section before the chorus snaps back in. The band performed it on the Old Grey Whistle test that year, and you can see exactly why it worked on television. They look like a band that had been doing this for a decade. Day Tripper is where things get interesting. The original Beatles riff still recognizable, just about, but Whitesnake had buried it in a thick, overdriven guitar tone and slowed the whole thing down until it lumbers rather than bounces. Lord's Hammond sits alongside the guitars in the mix, adding that Deep Purple texture, and Coverdale delivers the lyrics with a gritty swagger that has absolutely nothing to do with the Lennon-McCartney's original delivery. Live, the band apparently used it as a vehicle for extended improvisations and crowd work. You can hear why. The title track is the album's emotional centerpiece. Slow burning, dramatic, heavy blues at its most patient and deliberate. And Nighthawk Vampire Blues leans all the way into the blues tradition in a way that makes clear exactly where Coverdale Moody's musical roots are planted. The album closes with Don't Mess With Me, which does what a good closing track should, send you out the door with energy and attitude. Trouble didn't set the charts on fire, but it did something more important. It established that Whitesnake was a real band with a real identity, gritty, soulful, blues-soaked, British hard rock with a twin guitar attack and a Hammond organ, and a frontman who knew exactly what kind of singer he was. The UK rock scene took notice. The live following started building, and in the studio, Coverdale was already writing the next chapter. Which brings us to Love Hunter, released in 1979. It's the album where Whitesnake got heavier, got sharper, and got considerably more controversial. Thanks to an album cover so provocative, it became one of the most talked about images in classic rock history. And if that wasn't enough, there's another face that we know coming behind the drum kit. That's Ian Pace, Deep Purple's legendary timekeeper. He was coming back into Coverdale's world. That's next time. Don't miss it. Check out this playlist. The Story of Deep Purple. This is all the albums by Deep Purple and adjacent bands. Whitesnake, Rainbow, Gillan, the Ian Gillan Band, and a few others. Select Black Sabbath. It's all going to be there. I just add them as I make them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.